Welcome to 6th grade math. There was no homework due. You ready for the lesson? Bamboo can grow at about 4.92 feet in height per day. The table shows different ways to find the total height a bamboo plant can grow in 2 days. So we could add 4.92 feet plus 4.92 feet equals 9.84 feet. We could estimate 4.92 is about 5. So 2 times 5 is 10. And we can multiply 2 times 4.92, and if we use the addition problem and the estimate to find 2.492, we get 9.84. So write an addition problem, an estimate, and a multiplication problem to find the total growth over 3, 4, and 5 days. So if we add, we'll have 4.92 plus 4.92 plus 4.92 equals 14.76. And if we estimate, 3 times 5 equals 15. And multiplication, 3 times 4.92 equals 14.76. So for 4 days, if we add that 4 times, we get 19.68. We could estimate, which is 4 times 5 is 20. And then we could multiply 4 times 4.92 equals 19.68. And then for 5 days, if we add it 5 times, we get 24.6. We estimate 5 times 5 is 25. And if we do multiplication, 5 times 4.92 equals 24.6. Scaffolding questions. 652 times 13 equals 876. How can you use estimating to tell whether this answer is reasonable? Well, we could round 652 to 700, round 13 to 10, multiply 700 times 10 and get 7,000. So 876 is not reasonable for 652 times 13. How about 379 times 6 equals 2,274. So we could round 379 to 400 and multiply 400 times 6 and get 2,400. So 379 times 6 equals 2,274 is a reasonable answer since 400 times 6 is 2,400. 12.1 times 5 is 605. How can you use estimating to tell whether the answer is reasonable? If we round 12.1 to 10, multiply 10 times 5 equals 50. So the answer is not reasonable. What is the error in the third answer? Person probably forgot to show the decimal place. So instead of 605, it probably should have been 60.5. When multiplying a decimal by a whole number, use estimation to place the decimal point in the product. You can also count the number of decimal places. Multiply decimals. Find 14.2 times 6. Method 1, we're going to use estimation. So we'll round 14.2 to 14. 14.2 times 6 is 14 times 6, or 84. 14.2 times 6 is actually 85.2. Since the estimation is 84, place a decimal point after the 5, and we get 85.2. So if we do it another way, count the decimal places, we multiply 14.2 times 6, we get 85.2. There's one decimal point there, and we'll count one decimal place from the right, and that's how we know it's 85.2. Number 2, find 9 times 0.83. If we use estimation, we round 0.83 to 1, and 0.83 is also 83 hundredths. 9 times 83 hundredths equals 9 times 1, or 9. If we multiply 9 times 83 hundredths, we get 7.47. Since the estimation is 9, place a decimal point after the 7 because we know there's going to be one whole number, and 7.47. So if we just multiply 9 times 83 hundredths, we'd get 747, and there's 2 decimal places in 83 hundredths, the tenths and the hundredths place. So we will count 2 decimal places from the right and put in the decimal point between the 7 and 4. So there's two decimal places in the problem. So there's 2 decimal places in the answer. Choose your method. Find 3.4 times 5. So using estimation, we'll change 3.4 to 3. So 3.4 times 5 becomes 3 times 5, or 15. And if we actually multiply it out, we get 17, or so because 15 has 2 in the whole number plate, the ones and the tens, 17 will as well, so we'll place the decimal point after the 7. Method 2, if we just count the decimal places, 3.4 times 5 equals 170, and we have 1 decimal place, and we'll count 1 decimal place from the right, and we'll have 17.0. Find 11.4 times 8. Use estimation. 11.4 to 11. 11.4 times 8 becomes 11 times 8, or 88. So if we do that, we get 91.2. Since the estimate is 88, place the decimal point after the 1, and 91.2 is close to 88. Method 2, count the decimal places. 11.4 times 8 has 1 decimal place. So when we multiply it out, we get 912, which then we move the decimal point 1 spot, we get 91.2. Choose your method. 7 times 2.04. Method 1, use estimation. 2.04, we're going to round to 2. So we get 7 times 2.04 becomes 7 times 2, or 14. 2.04 times 7 is 14.28, and we put the decimal after the 4 because the estimation had 14. Then count the decimal places. Method 2, 2.04 times 7 equals 14.28, and we place the decimal point with 2 decimal places because there were 2 decimal places in the problem, so there are 2 in the product, or the answer. Multiplying a decimal by a whole number is similar to multiplying 2 whole numbers. The only difference is determining where to place the decimal point. If there aren't enough decimal places in the product, you need to annex zeros to the left. Annex zeros in the product, so we have 0.018 times 2. So 2 times 18 is 36. And we have 3 decimal places in the problem, so we need to have 3 in the product, or the answer. So if we slide that over 3 places, then we get 0.036. Number 4, algebra, evaluate for C if C equals 0.0027. So if we replace C, we get 4C equals 4 times 0.0027. And if we multiply that out, 4 times 27 is 108. But there are 4 decimal places in the problem, and there's only 3 numbers in the answer so far. So we're going to have to annex a 0 to the left in order to place 4 decimal places in the answer. Check your progress. 3 times 0.02, and we would get 3 times 2 is 6. But there's 2 decimal places, so we need to annex a 0 to the left of the 6, and that will give us 2 decimal places in the answer as well. So 0.12 times 8, 8 times 12 is 96. There's 2 decimal places in the problem. There's 2 numbers in the answer, so we're all set. We can just put the decimal point before the 9, and we get 0.96. And 11 times 0.045, we're going to get 495. There's 3 decimal places in the problem, so we need to have 3 in the answer, which we have. So we just slide that decimal point over 3 places and we get 0.495. And algebra, evaluate 7x if x equals 0.03. So we're going to replace the x. We get 7x equals 7 times 0.03. And 7 times 3 is 21. There's 2 decimal places in the problem, so there's 2 in the answer. Multiply by 10, 100, or 1,000. Find 5.7 times 1,000. Method 1, use paper and pencil. So we'll do the algorithm, 5.7 times 1,000, and we get 7,000, and then we get 50,000, so we get 57,000. We have 1 decimal place. We have to count 1 decimal place from the right. So we put that in there, and we get 5,700. Method 2, use mental math. Move the decimal point to the right, the same number of places, same number of zeros that are in 1,000, so 3 places. 5.7 times 1,000 equals 5.7, but if we move the decimal point 3 places, we get 5,700. So choose your method. Find 7.9 times 1,000. Method 1, use paper and pencil. 1,000 times 7.9, get 9,000. 7 times 1,000 with the 0 is 70,000, so we get 79,000. We have 1 decimal place, so we'll move the decimal point 1 place to the left, and that gives us 7,900. Method 2, use the mental math, and we'll move the decimal point to the right, the same number of zeros that are in 1,000. So there are 3 zeros in 1,000, so we will move 7.9 times 1,000. We will move the decimal point 7.9 3 times. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, so that equals 7,900. Find 4.13 times 10. Use paper and pencil. There's our algorithm. So if we do the math out, we get 4130. There's 2 decimal places, so we're going to move the decimal point 2 places to the left. We get 41.30. If we do it mental math and we just move the decimal point in 4.13 1 place to the right for the 1, 0, and 10. 4.13, we move it 1 place, we get 41.3. J, find 2.3 times 100. With the algorithm, if we multiply that out, 2,300, we have 1 decimal place, so move the decimal point 1 place to the left, we get 230. And if we do it using mental math and just moving the decimal place based on a number of zeros in 100, 2.3 times 100, we're going to move that decimal point in 2.3 2 places to the right, and we get 230. Additional examples, 18.9 times 4. If we multiply that, it's 756. Where does the decimal go? There's 1 in the problem, so there's 1 decimal place in the answer, so it's 75.6. We have 0.56 times 7, and we use the algorithm to multiply that out. We get 392. Where does the decimal go? There's 2 decimal places in the problem, so we're going to put 2 decimal places in the answer, and we get 3.92. So number 3 times 0.016 is our standard algorithm for multiplication. We multiply 3 times 16, we get 48. Where does the decimal go? Well, we have 3 decimal places in the problem, and we only have 2 numbers in the answer, so we have to annex a 0 to the left and add the decimal point to the left of that 0. And that gives us 3 decimal places in the answer. Algebra, evaluate 5g if g equals 0.0091. So g equals 5 times 0.0091. There's our standard algorithm. We multiply it out. It's 455. Problem is there's only 3 numbers in the answer. There are 4 decimal places in the problem. So we need to annex a 0 to the left and add the decimal point. And number 5, mental math. Find 3.25 times 100. And if we do that, there's 2 zeros in 100. So we're going to move the decimal point in 3.25 2 places to the right, which gives us 325. There's your homework. It's waiting for you on Google Classroom to fill it out. I hope that you have a great evening. Thank you.